What is up, guys? Jason up, New Age Revolution, down here in the cave. Today is the 6-year-old's birthday. He is now 6, newly 6. Finley, my former 5-year-old, is now 6 today. So I took off from work, and we did a bunch of stuff. We were going to go to the Buffalo Zoo, but they're closed. They are only open 3 days a week, so we had to settle for the local zoo, which is fine. You know, the Seneca Park Zoo. A zoo is a zoo, right? The kids are, madly in love with zoos. I don't like them for lots of reasons. And then, but since Buffalo kind of got all messed up, Buffalo was going to include food and all that. We were like, well, what are we going to do? So I came up with the worst idea ever of going to Chuck E. Cheese. Well, let me tell you, Chuck E. Cheese is not, obviously not the Chuck E. Cheese that it used to be. I'm aware of that. I wasn't expecting that, but the price and the product are not, they do not coincide. They're not, it's not worth it. And it's a ridiculously inflated price. And the food is not good. The pizza is fair, but we got like we got the pizza, the drinks, and then you get the sampler appetizer pack, which includes a handful of French fries, literally 4 buffalo wings, and cheese bread. Just a bad time, and all of that was just under $100, because you got 40 minutes of play too in there with their games. So I was like, good God, what a Chuck E. Cheese, no good. A bad place. Dave & Buster's is, worlds better. We have a little place in town called Adventure Landing, which is like a smaller Dave & Buster's. It's got putt-putt, miniature golf and stuff like that. That's worlds better. Chuck E. Cheese needs to maybe hang it up. Their prices are garbage. Anyway, so that's what I've been doing today. We had a quick topic come up while we were doing the WWF LJN tournament. All of you are asking for the My Favorite Managers tournament. Absolutely, that's coming. I wanted to hit a few other shows first before we jumped into another tournament. We'll probably get the Managers tournament done in 2 days. That's not fast. Or that's not a slow tournament. Might even get it done in 1 day. But we'll do My Favorite Managers. Somebody asked for My Favorite Galoobs. You already know who my favorite Galoob figure is, the Ric Flair Galoob. We can do my favorite AWA Remco figures, though. And that'll be more nostalgia-based because they all have the same body and they all have the same play pose, right? There's fat body and there's muscular body. So it might be a story-based my favorite AWA Remco figure. But as we were doing the tournament, I somehow slipped in the idea of the Mount Rushmore of 80's toys, right? Who would our top 4 representatives be to showcase this fictional Mount Rushmore? Now, if you are not from Merca, then maybe you're not familiar with Mount Rushmore. It's okay. It's no big deal. It's this mountain carving of all 4 presidents. I can't even tell you the 4 that are on there. I think George Washington's one of them. And I are a homeschool father, but I don't know Mount Rushmore. I don't know. It's never that important to me. But the Mount Rushmore theory has been talked about in professional wrestling. Who's your Mount Rushmore of the 80's in WWF or the 80's in NWA? Well, I thought of the Mount Rushmore of 80's toys, right? 4 images, because during that tournament, you kept hearing me talk about visually iconic, right? The Hulk Hogan figure is a visually iconic figure. Randy Savage, visually iconic, right? When you look at it, it just screams so much more than just Hulk Hogan wrestling figure, right? So it got me thinking about the idea. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about my 80s toys Mount Rushmore. Now, I don't want to just do, this can go one of two ways. We can do, universally what I think the top 4 toys of the 80s would be, image-wise. But I'd have to include toys that I was not interested in during that, to complete it correctly, because Barbie would probably be on there. I think Transformers would certainly be on there, Optimus Prime or something like that. But I was never into Transformers. And so Optimus Prime is not going to be on my Mount Rushmore of 80s toys. No, so let's do it. Let's do our personal Mount Rushmore. Let's do our own Mount Rushmore. So in the comments, don't you hate when people do this on YouTube? In the comments below. So, down below in the comments, tell me your top 4, right? Tell me your Mount Rushmore from your childhood, the toys that made the most sense to you, that had the most action in your life. Right, let's do that. So for me, I already told you who was on it. I told you that Hulk Hogan was on the 80s Toys Mount Rushmore. And I believe that that's probably more than just mine. I think that the Hogan LJN could very well make the top 4 cut of most visually iconic, most representative toys of a decade, I think. And since you've been looking at a loose Hulk Hogan for like 2 months now with the tournament, I figured that I would show you the carded Hulk Hogan. Now this is special, and I'll show you how special it was, and it is, and how I take care of my stuff so well. This is autographed. This is signed to me by the Hulkster himself. Met him. He came to a Buffalo Comic-Con a few years ago, a tiny little Buffalo Comic-Con called Nickel City Con. And, really not that big of a deal. Not a big show at all. But they brought in the Hulkster. And, I got a VIP pass for him. It was like $300. And $300 got you early entry to the show, and then your own personal meet and greet with Hulk Hogan. Well, the personal meet and greet ended up being, 150 of us in line. They sold 150 tickets. 150 of us in line walking to a table to meet Hulk Hogan and say hello and shake his hand and have him sign whatever you wanted him to sign as part of the $150 package. And then you got the photo too. So that was the personal meet and greet. It was a table signing. But I met him and he signed the figure, and I want him to personalize it. I think autographs and autograph memorabilia means more to a collector if it's personalized, to me anyways. That kind of confirms that, I met him, if he wrote my name on it. So here it is. So this figure is destroyed. This was 100% sealed at one time, and because I got it autographed, I put it up in one of our living rooms, the living room that we call the theater room. And I put it up there on a shelf, and it was kind of leaning on the shelf, and the children are animals. They're absolute gorillas, and they run and they jump, and they our couch we got like this weird couch that's like one big giant like square type thing. It like sits 40 people. Well, it's their trampoline. They jump on it. They wrestle. They hit the floor, and whenever they were hitting the floor, the earth was shaking. And one day, Hogan came tumbling down from about 8 feet in the air, and hit the deck, hit the ground. The bubble cracked. It popped off the card. I've had to reattach it with staples. It's destroyed. It's a 5-back, by the way. And all of you were freaking out. And when I got home, I think I was working. It's big crack right here in the bubble. I think I was working that day. And when this hit the ground, the children and their mother just started packing their bags. They were ready to move out. The taxi was called. I think they'd booked a hotel for like a week. And said I come in and they're just looking at me like, we know we just ruined your life. You don't even know it. And then I saw it and I was like, okay. Because, whatever. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to sell it one day for $700? That's going to change my life, $700. So this'll probably get buried with me, or I'll sell it, I'll give it to my kid, and he'll probably sell it for weed or something. But I don't care. It's fine. It's still kind of on the card. Right, and it still sits up back. I put it back up on the shelf. But anyway, that's a lot of talking. Hulk Hogan is on my 1980s Mount Rushmore, and guess what? He's in the package, right? If I could carve the Mount Rushmore, I would include this. So my first entry to the 1980s toy Mount Rushmore is a carded Hulk Hogan figure. Number 2, keeping with the carded theme. No, I'm going to show it to you carded, but I think visually it's more iconic if it's out of the package. But I think some of you are going to disagree with this, and that's why I said let's do our own personal 80s toys Mount Rushmore. Now, first of all, this we've talked about this item before. This item to me created the toy world as we probably still know it today. It created the craze for toys. And I don't believe that any toy prior to this, whether it was in the earlier 80s or the 70s, ever created anything near the desire, the buzz, the insanity. I've showed you the videos in the past. I probably won't put one up now of the riots that broke out when these toys were put out for sale. And so not only does it have such a huge impact, I think it paved the way for lunatic collectors, to lunatic scalpers, hoarders, people who are standing outside of Target at 6 a.m. To collect a toy. I think this toy ushered in that craze. So the second item on my 80s Mount Rushmore, my 80s toys Mount Rushmore, is a Cabbage Patch doll. This one is boxed, but you can see obviously the recognizable, quite ugly face of the Cabbage Patch doll. Why is it so important? Well, like I just said, I think it changed toys. I think it began and kept us right where we are, as far as collectors and collections and like I said, toy craze. But I loved them, and I still do. When I think of 80s toys, I think of Cabbage Patch dolls. And I had one. I had one. Well, I have a bunch now, but I had one officially as a kid. And to me, the item is going to be on the Mount Rushmore if it turned a boy into a baby doll collector or player with her, right? It turned a 9-10-year-old boy into a doll aficionado. Now we're talking about 1985 here, guys. So, if you were a boy in 1985, you didn't play with dolls, or baby dolls anyway, and I know that we've changed and morphed and all the stuff that's happened in this era, as far as gender stuff and boys and girls and toys and labels and stuff like that. But in 1985, you weren't showing off your Cabbage Patch doll to your buds, or else you might get punched in the stomach. But that's okay. I didn't care because I wanted a Cabbage Patch doll, and I never got an official Cabbage Patch doll as a kid. They were just difficult to find, or they were too expensive. And I don't know what too expensive was. I assume these dolls were like $19.99 or $29.99 back in the day. Certainly not something I would consider expensive, but maybe something that was considered expensive back then. So we had a bootleg, and as I've said before, stay-at-home moms, crafty sewing machine, talented moms, capitalized on this and made their own Cabbage Patch dolls, and all the hobby shops sold the kits and the heads and all that. And they would make their own Cabbage Patch dolls, and one of our neighbors made them, and my sisters and I each got one, and I got one, and I carried around the Cabbage Patch doll for a good year or so. And in fact, I had a friend in the neighborhood who also had a Cabbage Patch doll, another boy. And he came over one day, and my great-grandma was over, right? Great-grandma, who was born in 1750s. Great-grandma was there, and she saw two 9-year-old boys walking around the house with dollies. And she went off. She told my mom, what is going on? Why are those two boys carrying around Cabbage Patch dolls? Shouldn't they be out, shoving fireworks into frogs' mouths or fight? Should they be fighting? Should they just start fighting each other? My great-grandmother was upset that I had a Cabbage Patch doll. But I did. So, Cabbage Patch doll on the Mount Rushmore. Yes. Next up, while, look, I've told you, I was a wrestling figure kid, period. That's the only toy that ever had a chance in my life. Wrestling figures. End of story. But there was another toy that was just on the fringe, just on the outside. So fringe is actually important because wrestling dominated. So if you were on the fringe, you were important. Unfortunately, Transformers was never anything that I was ever interested in. At all, ever. But G.I. Joe was. And so I had a few G.I. Joes, and I absolutely loved the cartoon. But my best pal, that you've heard me mention before, my best pal Howie, in my 9-year-old brain, had every single G.I. Joe ever, right? In every playset, every vehicle ever. I don't think that's true, but in my head he did. And his dad went as far as setting him up like a Cobra World in the... You know what? You know how kids have model train sets in their basement, and their dad gets a big piece of plywood and puts it on 2 sawhorses and sets up the world? That's what he had. He had these plywood worlds, one across from each other, a G.I. Joe world and a Cobra world. And when I would go in his basement, and he had them all set up, and they're all holding guns. When I went down there, I would just I was just blown away. I was transported back, in time. Looking at that setup. And so I kind of lived, my G.I. Joe collection I lived vicariously through Howie. But I would say that for sure, we have to have 2 representatives of G.I. Joe on Mount Rushmore, right? Maybe you can put their heads next to each other. We got to have Duke, and we got to have Cobra Commander. Now, Destro could easily be on there. Lady J, Baroness could easily be on there. And in fact, I could make the case of maybe dropping Duke and just having the iconic, Cobra face on there, the Cobra mask. Or the Cobra hood, I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and put Duke and Cobra Commander atop Mount Rushmore together. sharing a spot. Now, the fourth and final spot, an important, visually iconic image of my 80s childhood toy collecting. Now, it was going to be a video game representative, right? And so immediately you're going to go, well, it's a Nintendo, right? Or it's Super Mario. No, I'm gonna bring that back a little bit, and my fourth and final image, and it's plugged in, so I can't really pull it over there, but an Atari, okay, an Atari 2600 is going to be my fourth item on the Mount Rushmore. Honestly, it meant more to me than Nintendo. Atari was the first video game I'd ever played. Maybe before then I'd played a couple of arcade games, maybe. But Atari was the first time that I ever experienced a video game, and I'm glad that I never became obsessed with video games, because I think it just would have, it would just be a mess. I played them as a simpleton. I played video games as a very simple kid. I wasn't good at them, right? I was just playing them to play them. And so that's why I appreciated like Atari Pac-Man, right? Everybody hates Atari Pac-Man, and I'm like, it's great, it's Pac-Man. And then when the Nintendo came, I'd never even, you talk about games like Metroid and Zelda, I could probably get through about 45 seconds of Metroid before I'm dead, right? I've never seen any advanced stages of Metroid. I still don't know how to play Zelda. I still don't know what the deal is. Super Mario 3, forget about it. Super Mario 1, it took me probably a decade to beat, at least 5 years after getting the Nintendo. Ghosts and Goblins, you're not getting anywhere near the finals of that one. So I just had fun with it. I played it very not seriously. But Atari, to me, is more important. Atari is more important to my life than Nintendo. And, I would say still is to a degree, but then you'd look at the Nintendo game collection and you'd say, no, it's not. I have over 400 Nintendo games. I just went on a run, and it became an interest, collecting Nintendo games. I haven't gotten a new Nintendo game in years. So much to the fact where I was maybe thinking of selling off the 410 Nintendo games, because, I don't know, you can play them on, I don't know. But Atari is, so that's it. That's my Mount Rushmore. A carded LJN, Hulk Hogan, a Cabbage Patch doll, Duke and Cobra Commander, of course, representing G.I. Joe and Cobra, and the Atari 2600. That's my 80s Toys Mount Rushmore. I'm sure it won't match up entirely with yours. I want to hear yours. I know there's some Transformers guys out there. Even Star Wars guys, even though they came in, early 80s and then that was it. But give me yours, give me your thoughts. All right, that's that. We've got Wrestling with the Past is back. I'm ready to do a new show on that. I've got 3 shows to review, and I want to do like the dinner in the movie thing again, right? The horror night, the vintage horror night, which is just going to turn into like vintage movie night or just plain movie night. But I'm going to cook. I want to make my famous baked chicken wings for you guys because I want them. And I want to show you how good they are. I want you to never go to a pizza place, chicken wing place ever again. Anyway. All right, so that's that. We'll see y'all next time. Tell me about your Mount Rushmores. Good night now.